Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Football House on House Enterprise. I'm Sam Basel, joined alongside Cole Hughes and Jake Zimmer. And guys, it's been a couple weeks since we've been able to, get together and have a show. We've been doing our picks on our social media pages, but it's great to have, again, almost the full squad back as we head into Week 12 of the 2025 college football season. I know we've been up to a lot. Cole, you've been a rambling man, going to Europe, going to West Virginia. Jake, you and I have been getting ready for college basketball season, which, if you're a college basketball fan, you make sure you head over to the House Enterprise blog and check out our House of College Hoops offerings, our everything college basketball offerings, and our Road to the Garden offerings for all you Big East fans. But, we're getting into the real thick of it in terms of the college football campaign. We have just released, or the College Football Playoff Committee has just released their second weekly college football playoff brackets. So we're getting closer and closer to those becoming finalized. This past weekend had a lot of crazy games. Obviously, the big one being Indiana and Penn State down to the absolute wire. But yeah, let's get into it. First, I want to, for some transparency, get into a pretty tough start or, as this season moves on, a pretty tough continuation of this season. 3 out of 4 of us are under 500 with our picks. Jake, you had a pretty solid week again, and you are really, really getting ahead of the pack here. Any thoughts on how you've been doing this season?
I don't want to jinx it. That's all. That's all was coming to mind. But oh wow, did he just take himself out? He didn't even want to hear it. Basil asked me the question and then dipped. He didn't want to hear my secrets. I've operated by a very simple MO these past few weeks, and it's just like go with your gut. All right. I was doing too much analysis, and I was just now I'm just picking what makes me feel good. So my cards have been giving me the warm and fuzzies these last couple of weeks. I will say I feel a lot less good about my card this week than I have in several other weeks. But I'm just amazed that this is the people are calling this a generational comeback on the streets here from down in the depths, spending a lot of time at 4 and just leapfrogging everybody up to 1. I don't know. That's what the
This
people
is
are
big
saying.
for you. You need it this year. I'm happy for
I
you.
know. I've always been bringing up the rear, so I've gotta have something to redeem me too. I'm also like volume spraying here as well, if you can't really tell. But yeah, it's
Hey,
all good.
it's been working out for you, though. So, yeah, a generational run, a generational awful run from me. But as we get into it, this is, talking about college football playoff. If you've been following the top 25 that we've been putting out on the Football House, this is a bracket that I made based on our most recent rankings. Obviously, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, they're kind of running the board here. We had James Madison as our group of 5 rep. But as we can see by the latest committee bracket, they were not as kind to James Madison, and they actually had USF in the group of 5 spot. So let's get into it. Texas is the 10th seed, Ole Miss the 6th seed. Some interesting matchups there. Texas and Oregon in the first round. Wait, that's not. Something's off there. But sorry, hold on. Freezing up here. USF in the 12th spot for the current college football playoff as things stand. Cole, you and I, as we get right before the show, we were kind of talking about Paul Feinbaum. He was kind of going off on a little bit of a rant today, talking about how maybe we are being a little bit too kind to group of 5 teams and allowing a 5th conference representative. Because as we've seen, USF is they're the 12th seed, but in the overall top 25 rankings, they're the 24th out of 25th best team, according to the College Football Playoff Committee. He was basically saying that it's not really fair that we're extending a playoff spot to the 24th best overall team. And a team like Miami, who is actually, they're finding themselves outside the top 12 as well as a conference rep, finding themselves getting an automatic bid to the College Football Playoff. Cole, any thoughts on, whether or not this system of automatic qualifiers is really working so far in the playoffs. I have my answer, Jake. I'm sure you have yours. But as we saw some changes last year. Obviously, they were, conference champs are no longer getting an automatic bye. So do we feel like there's going to be some tweaks as we move into the 16-team playoff era? Maybe it's going to be harder for some group of 5 teams to get in here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think his argument of not letting a group of 5 team in, I don't agree with it. I like that the committee is putting a team like whether it's USF or JMU or whoever it ends up being. I like having them in, right? I think right now it adds to the excitement factor of the college football playoff, right? Having one of those teams that could potentially make a run, be a Cinderella type. I mean, different sport, but look at March Madness every year. Everyone always loves when a Cinderella team goes and, runs it through the bracket and goes on a run, right? So, I mean, it's a little less likely to happen in college football just because when you have, the 12 seed playing, the 5th seed, it's harder to get that win and get out of that as an underdog. But I mean, I think it adds to the level of excitement. And, the example you use, Miami, it's like, yeah, they have 2 losses. Like, so, I mean, USF right now, they have 2 losses too, right? So what's the difference, right? Yes, Miami's played better schools. I get that, but they've lost. They lost to Louisville, and then who else did they lose to? SMU, right? So, which right now those 2 teams aren't in the playoffs. So, I can see both sides of the argument. Like you said, I think when this field gets larger to 16 teams, you kind of get the best of both worlds because you'll probably get a group of 5 team and then those teams that are on the fringe that are, part of the Power 4 conferences that, might be left out under this format will probably get in as well. So I think that eliminates kind of the conversation in years to come. But as of right now, I'm not against teams like JMU or USF or, whoever it may be, if it's a team out of the Mountain West. Look at Boise last year. I mean, Boise was unbelievable, right? And they were fun to watch even in the playoffs. So I'm not against it, but I could see why, some teams are.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, any thoughts on that?
No, I think we hit the nail on the head there. Like, not to make cross sports analogies here, but it's almost like, I see this evolving to the way that March Madness does, right? Where you're rooting for the JMUs of the world and the South Floridas and those sorts of schools. So yeah, I mean that's where you want this to get to ultimately, right? I think that's why those and Power decided that they're going to give the illusion of that effect, even though it's really lining their pockets more than likely. So that's ultimately where I see this thing going here. Is like where how do they March Madness-ify this this playoff situation. So really good start. I think it's serving its purpose. And, now that we've got a few years of data, I think they can start making some of those decisions in the next couple of years.
I actually think I know you kind of don't want to make a comparison to another sport, but I do think the March Madness comparison is actually very important because March Madness is also a sport right now where people look, I don't want to point fingers, but people from the SEC are clamoring for more bids year by year. And they're trying to push out some of the the mid-major, low-major programs on the basketball side. And we're seeing the same thing right now as we move into the college football playoff and further into it. I mean, there's talk of, the SEC wanting at least 3 or more automatic bids along with the Big Ten. That just seems ridiculous. But like you said, Cole, as we move into an expanded playoff tournament, when we were just doing the BCS championship game or even the 4-team playoff, the goal of these tournaments or these games was to figure out who the best team in the country was, who can stay perfect over, the course of a season, and who can really win 2 high quality, really tough games. Now, once you get into the 12 and 16 team eras, you're kind of turning it into, I guess, like a celebration of the sport, right? Like you're including a lot more of these teams that in years past would have been screwed with a loss in week 3. But if you're going to expand it more, there's no reason why you shouldn't have, teams from, the group of 5 in there. If you really want this to be an all-encompassing, expression of what college football is, then those teams deserve a spot. And look, if you're a team, I feel like we should start, encouraging this point of view more. But if you're a team in the SEC that's like in the middle of the table, like 5th or 6th in the SEC, and you really think you deserve a playoff spot and you want to secure your chance of being a consistent playoff contender, maybe leave the SEC. Maybe go join the Sun Belt for, in football. Maybe, so you can be the best team and be the best group of 5 team. I know that's like a ridiculous thing to say. I know a team would never do that, but like if you really want to secure an automatic spot every year, the best way to do it is to be a conference champion. And so maybe you should just find the conference that best suits you to be a champion every single year. I know no one's going to do that, but I think, maybe we should try and encourage more, maybe a little bit of a breakup of some of these massive power conferences before they, they get more powerful than they already are.
I mean, let's pull up if we can the current bracket that we have right now that the committee has, right?
Yeah, let me pull it up. Give me 1 second. Because I had it written out wrong on our graphic.
Even if the rankings aren't right, like let's just see what teams are there, because I want to take a look at like how many teams from the SEC are either in right now or on the bubble. How many teams from the Big Ten, ACC, these power schools? Because I mean, I think they're getting like.
All right, this is via PFF College. This is the current college football playoff bracket. So right now there are 5 SEC teams.
Right. That's what I'm saying, right? And then Big Ten, you have Oregon, you have Indiana.
There are 3 Big Ten teams. And then there's 1 Big 12, 1 ACC, 1 American, and then Notre Dame is the independent.
Yeah, I mean, I think that works. Like what you're seeing right there, I think that works. And in this picture, you have Miami and USF both getting in. Right.
Yeah.
So, that's just proving my point, right? Like the SEC, you have 5 schools in the bracket, right? Big Ten, you have 3, and then the other conferences have 1, and then an independent. So I don't think there's any issue with including an American or a Mountain West team, in this field is what I'm getting at, because, the best conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, they have 3 or more teams that are representing there. So I think it's more than fair.
Absolutely. And thank you, PFF College, for providing that little graphic for us as my graphic crapped out. But let's get into our picks for this week. Starting off, Jake, you're our leading man. I'm going to give you the floor for your call.
I can't believe this. I'm honored. I've never gone first before. I don't know what to do. This is such unfamiliar territory for me. So the card here, Louisville. Yeah, let's start at the top here. Louisville -2.5 over Clemson. And look, I'm still high on Miller Moss. I think last week was another gut check for Louisville, but they're still in solid shape right now. I think this has a bounce back game written all over it. Clemson's 1-2 now. They've played some bad teams, so that skews their record. I'm all on the cards here. Oh wait, were we going into picks? I'm sorry, did I jump the gun, or did we were we recapping the previous week first?
No, definitely go for your current picks. Yeah.
Cool. All right. We're going to Notre Dame over Pitt -12. I officially have no doubts about Notre Dame this year, right? I've said Pitt was inflated all year. Pat Narduzzi had some skepticism around him. They put together a good couple weeks. I will take that away from them. They've shut a lot of people up. This is their come to Jesus game here against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, I think, and this is a rout.
Come to touchdown, Jesus.
Correct. Yeah, I was looking for the pun in there. There it is. The Catholic school, all that stuff. Come to touchdown, Jesus. Love it. USC -6 over Iowa. USC's hitting its stride right now. The only loss since end of September was Illinois, and they course corrected pretty quickly. I think they are a big-time offense. at second in the nation, or excuse me, it wasn't Illinois. It was Notre Dame, right? It was since Illinois, I'm pretty sure. But either way, they haven't lost since the end of September. So I think big time offense right now. I think the prospect of them playing Iowa intrigues me because although the Iowa game was very close last week against Oregon, Iowa, my fear about them is now they have put on film how they stop a tough air raid offense like Oregon, right? So that was the gripe last week with Iowa with Iowa was all right. What are they going to throw at Oregon, who loves to get creative, and Dan Lanning's offensive playbook has got to be thousands of pages long at this point, depending on what personnel he's got in there. So that's on film now, right? Now USC goes back to the film room and says, "Cool, all right, this is all the stuff they're going to throw at us, and we pass the football really well too. We run the football really well too. We do a lot of the same stuff that Oregon does directionally." So that's what worries me about Iowa staying in this game here. So I'm all USC. Good for 6 points here. West Virginia plus 11 is another interesting one, and I may be completely biased here, but they're playing some better ball right now. I mean, they're kind of riding a little bit of a high here. 45-35 over Houston was a huge notch in the bedpost there, and then a solid 7-point win over Colorado last week. I think they can at least keep it close against Arizona State here. Now that they're hitting stride, they've course corrected as well. It's a team that looks like they're playing a little bit better football for Richie Rodriguez here. So let's see what happens there. I think they cut this down to at least potentially a low 2 possession game out in the desert. Virginia plus 4.5 against Duke is another interesting one. They both took upset losses last week. Duke losing it on the road at UConn, that's a tough one. And then Virginia getting beat by Cal and OT. I simply think Virginia has too much on the line in this year to not squander this one, right? This is the best they've been in the last 6 years. All right. They were 9-5 in 2019. They have too much to lose. So this was a contender for lock of the week. Like I think they simply I can't believe that Duke's laying points here, to be quite honest. Maybe I'm blinded by Virginia's several OT wins that I've watched this year, but I just love the way they played. So that's out of Virginia. I think San Diego State, Boise State is an interesting one too. This is the winner almost certainly goes to the Mountain West title game here. So watch out for that. Boise's offensive minded, San Diego State's defensive minded for the most part. Boise is down Maddox Madden potentially. Or Madsen, I should say. He will probably not play. I think they've actually ruled him out officially. So they're going to put a former walk-on Max Cutforth out there, QB2. I combine that with San Diego State being a covering machine at home this year. They're 4-0 in their last 4 games at home. I think this has San Diego State written all over it. They punched their ticket. The way things shake out, if they lose that game, there's going to be a lot more work they have to do, and they're going to have to go play New Mexico next week, and that is going to be a bit more complicated here. So I think San Diego State recognized the opportunity. They pick off Boise State, and they beat them by a field goal. I think it's going to be a really good game out in the Pacific, out of the Pacific Coast here.
Yeah, San Diego State, if you look but just by points allowed per game, top 5 defense in the country in FBS.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been really, really good this year. And that's kind of a quiet, our defense is really good situation, right? There's been not a lot of chatter out of the Mountain West. It's been about, hey, can San Diego State just hold the line here? And they're going to have to beat Boise State at some point. Realistically, they're going to be Boise State or New Mexico. That's going to play them if the current Vegas predictions pan out. So yeah, we'll see.
They've been great at home too this year. They're undefeated at home. So
yeah, they've been, and they've covered, right? So that's all really good. So my FCS lock of the week, I'm very sorry to report, Basel, I'm taking the Georgetown Hoyas, man. I'm sorry to report breaking news here that Fordham is not a great football team, and that's the only reason why I'm picking Georgetown here. I'm not super high in Georgetown, but even a broken clock is right twice a day. So Georgetown gets their win over Fordham here. They go to 6-5. They try to finish one of their first winning seasons in quite a bit. So that's the FCS or the FCS lock of the week. Then the FBS one, this is an interesting one. BYU and TCU just seems a little low for me of what BYU is laying. And look, TCU's had some interesting finals this year. I'm pulling up the match preview deck right now here. So yeah, I mean TCU 6-3. Their last couple of weeks have been interesting. They took an L against Iowa State, and then not inspiring wins against West Virginia and Baylor. To me, like I don't. There's not one that jumps out on the page here that tells me TCU is anything better than maybe a 10-point underdog against BYU. Their wins are just uninspiring, right? It's like, I think you look back at week 1 and you say, wow, they picked off Bill Belichick. That's a great win. And then we found out what Bill Belichick's team was at North Carolina. And then it all of a sudden becomes like, oh yeah, they should have done that. I really like BYU. I think they just let it get out of hand against Texas Tech in the second half. I think they were stifled. So I think that's their wake up call. But I also think this is a good opportunity at home to right the ship again. So that's the card.
Love it. Question for you. If you're a true college football sicko, are you rooting for USC to win out their schedule and then Ohio State or Indiana to drop one of their remaining 2 or 3 games? Because Ohio State's got 3 games left. Indiana's got 2 games left. Are you rooting for one of those teams to fall out of the title picture so USC could slide in? Or is Indiana being this good already good enough for the college football sickos?
Oh, man.
It's a good question.
I don't know. Like, do you bank on Ohio State losing a game? That's a question, because I would want Ohio State to lose, right?
So
I would.
Yeah, it's so tough because their remaining schedule is UCLA, Rutgers, and then obviously Michigan. And then Indiana plays Wisconsin this week, and then they're off, and then they play Purdue at Purdue to finish out the season. So are you kind of rooting for Purdue to get the upset on Indiana? This is nothing against Indiana. It's just like how much late are you just – do we want some like late season Big Ten chaos? Because obviously both Ohio State and Indiana, I think, are pretty much locks for the playoff. No matter what happens.
I think Michigan over Ohio State at the Big House would make this a lot more of an interesting conversation.
That's what I was going with. I would rather see Indiana play USC in the Big Ten championship.
That would be crazy.
And not
Ohio State would really have to collapse, though. Like I think to Basil's point, like something drastic would have to happen to
no, for sure.
Pry them out.
They need to lose at least 2. They'd have to lose at least 2 because they're undefeated and USC's already got 1 loss in conference.
I don't see it happening, but, Michigan's had their number the last couple of years, and, Rutgers, UCLA, UCLA obviously fired their coach earlier this year, and they've, kind of went on a run a little bit afterwards. So, I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State, but they could make it interesting. Rutgers is a great coach team by Greg Schiano. So, bring on the chaos. I would love to see Indiana versus USC. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think Ohio State takes care of business. But that would be fun to watch, man.
Wouldn't that be so funny if Nico just messes around and beats Ohio State?
Yeah, it'd be wild. 2 things on your card, though, Jake, I want to point out. So West Virginia, I love that pick. I was at the game last week against Colorado.
No bias whatsoever. Right?
No bias, but being there and seeing it firsthand, I really like this West Virginia team. They started out, like you said, not so great, but they've been through 4 quarterbacks this year. I think Scotty Fox Jr., their quarterback that they have now, he's a freshman. He's played pretty well. Like you said, they beat Houston a couple weeks ago, which was huge for them. They ended up getting the gritty win against Colorado and Dion last week. So, I like where West Virginia is heading and, kind of the trajectory that they're on. I think they're going to have a much better year next year. But they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. I think that they could keep it close, though, out in the desert against Arizona State. So I love that pick. And then the other thing I wanted to touch upon was we talked a little bit about TCU and how they beat UNC earlier at the year. We thought that could have been a notable win, but, after seeing UNC's record, not so much. But I feel like Bill Belichick, and this might be a hot take, but I think he's gotten a lot of heat looking back where we are right now in the season. I mean, UNC's 4-5. A couple of weeks ago, we were looking at them. We're like, this is a total disaster. And I mean, he's almost 500. They could be bowl eligible this year. Last year with Mac Brown, they finished 6-7. So, I mean, to expect a team go from 6-7 to, 6-7, but to expect a team that had that record last year to, turn around within 1 year, bringing in a new coach, I think that's asking a lot. So, there's been a lot of eyes on the Tar Heels this year, and a lot of conversation, and especially because it's Belichick. But, where they're at right now, I don't think it's as bad as everyone thought it was going to be, had we talked about this in, late September, early October. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, it's and look, guilty. Like I think everybody's sensationalized this. Sorry to cut you off, Basel, but I think it was very easy to kind of throw him under the bus as like, what is this old man doing with Jordan and with all this other stuff and the rumors and all this crap that I agree that it made for a good story for a bit, and now everybody's just kind of not forgot about it, but they wrote him off, right? They wrote off North Carolina, at least this year. They kind of wrote off Bill Belichick. I was like, all right, why did he do this? It was a fun experiment. Now we're not going to keep tabs on this again. Yeah, I fundamentally agree with that. Sorry, Basel, go ahead.
No, I just want to say I think this remaining schedule, especially for Bill Belichick, is the perfect way to, secure, kind of give an upward turn on the end of this season, because you finish your schedule with 3 straight games in the state of North Carolina, at Wake Forest, home against Duke, at NC State. Winning out's kind of a big ask because Duke is 4-1. They're actually like a fringe contender for the ACC title game. Obviously
Wake Forest is no joke either.
Yeah, these are good schools, but 3 wins in a row, you become bowl eligible against Duke, and then you beat NC State for one more game to finish the season above 500, and then go to a bowl. Like that's a pretty solid run.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
A lot of people aren't talking about this, but North Carolina, they have the 15th ranked incoming recruiting class out of the whole country, right? So, yeah. I mean, he must be doing something right to be bringing in recruits. So I think it's still a little too early to write off Bill Belichick in his Tar Heel era. I think everyone, like we said, was freaking out at the beginning of the year. There was a lot of talk, and I think just sit still and let's see what happens there.
Yeah, let's see if he takes that giant spot in the offseason.
I don't think that's happening.
I don't think so either.
Imagine.
But Cole, you had a pretty solid week. You're approaching the 500 mark, almost there. Some of these spreads last week were so tough, but like that BYU Texas Tech, that's a bad beat. But how you gonna pack it up and get above 500 this week?
Yeah, I've been clawing all year, so hopefully this is the week where I finally break through and can get a couple games over 500. But my card, I got UConn -7.5 versus Air Force. Look, UConn they've been super impressive this year. I think they're a surprise to pretty much everyone. Jim Mora has done a great job with that program, and that can't be overstated. They're coming off a huge win against Duke last week. No one expected them to win that game. They pulled it out. So, good for them. They're 5-0 at home. They're playing at home this week. Air Force has to travel across the country. I think that's pretty tough. You look at UConn's record this year, they got 3 losses, right? All 3 losses came in overtime. They lost to Rice in overtime. They lost to Syracuse, and then they lost to another third team that I can't think of off the top of my head. But all 3 losses in overtime. Their quarterback, Joe Fagnano, has been great. He's thrown for 25 touchdowns this year, hasn't thrown a single pick. I mean,
isn't he like 26 too?
Yeah, he's been around for a while, but I mean, look, he's doing pretty well. He's being pretty efficient, not turning the ball over. So look, this team was 9-4 last year. The Huskies, which I think kind of went under the radar as well. They got the opportunity to finish this year potentially at 10-3 if they win a bowl game. So I think that they get there. I think that they surpass their record of last year, and I think they take care of Air Force this week. So taking them 7.5 at home. Virginia and Duke, this was on Jake's card. We talked a little bit about it. Look, Virginia had a tough loss last week against Wake Forest, right? But like we mentioned in the ACC, Wake Forest, kind of an underrated team, right? They're 6-3. They beat SMU this year. They should have beaten Georgia Tech. It was a close game. They ended up losing that game, but they held it pretty close. So I think, Wake is kind of under the radar, a team that should be respected. And the fact that Virginia lost them, I don't think you can knock them that much for it. So, the last time Virginia lost before losing a Wake last week, they lost to NC State at the beginning of the year. After that, they responded by winning 7 in a row, right? They're 8-2 on the year. They won 7 in a row. That included wins against Florida State, Louisville, some good teams in there, right? So if they responded after their first loss early in the year by winning 7 in a row, I think they bounced back after last week's loss to Wake Forest. It's all going to come down to how does their defense play, right? Duke, they have an electric offense. Darian Menser coming over from Tulane to Duke this year. They put up a lot of points this season. So, one question is how does Duke respond against the loss to UConn? And then can Virginia stop Duke's offense on defense? I think they keep it close. So I'm taking the Cavaliers plus 4.5 against Duke. Utah versus Baylor, two Big 12 teams. Baylor, look, their defense has not been great this year. They're letting up an average of 383 yards per game. That's not great when you're playing Utah, who's got the 12th ranked offense in all of the country. They're averaging about 40 points a game. I think they're at 39.5. So it doesn't really add up for Baylor. The last 2 wins, Utah has beaten Cincinnati and Colorado, and over that time span, they're outscoring their opponents 98-21. So putting up a ton of points on offense, not letting up that many points on defense. I think that continues. I think they go on the road and beat Baylor up pretty good this week. So taking them minus 6.5. Fresno State versus Wyoming. Look, Fresno, they're just a better team than Wyoming, I think. They've kind of been up and down this year. The Bulldogs, their real issue lies within their quarterback play. They've had a lot of turnovers, a lot of interceptions. It hasn't really been steady, under center. So in their 3 losses that they've had this year, their quarterbacks have thrown 7 picks in those games collectively. So, that's the problem. They started out with E.J. Warner at quarterback earlier in the year, Kurt Warner's son. He wasn't playing so great, so they ended up benching him for Carson Conklin, who started the last couple games. I think the key here for the Bulldogs, don't turn the ball over, and you take care of Wyoming. It's as simple as that. So if they can do that, I'm gonna take Fresno minus 3.5 against Wyoming. Minnesota and Oregon, Big Ten. Look, we talked a little bit about it last week. Oregon, it was a low-scoring, ugly game. They were lucky to get away against Iowa. I think the Ducks are due for a huge game on offense. Earlier in the year, they were putting up a ton of points. They've kind of plateaued or even declined a little bit over the last month or so. But, I think this is a prime opportunity at home for the Ducks to, put up a lot of points against Minnesota. I think Minnesota puts up enough points to get over that 44.5. The Gophers are 0-3 on the road, so I see the Ducks beating them convincingly. But, Minnesota's not an awful team either. They're 6-3. So, I think there's enough points between these two teams to get over 44.5. So I'm taking that in that game. My FCS lock of the week, taking Sacred Heart versus Merrimack. So Sacred Heart, they have 3 losses this year. Their 3 losses, one of them, Lehigh, head of the Patriot League, 10-0. Second loss, Central Connecticut, head of the Northeast, 7-3. Third loss, Montana, head of the Big Sky, 10-0. Right? So they're taking care of teams that aren't that good. They're not able to beat the teams that are better than them. I think they're better than Merrimack. They got a big win against Delaware State earlier and Deshaun Jackson. And again, they're 5-0 at home. So I'm going to take Sacred Heart here, straight up money line against Merrimack this week. FBS, I'm taking Missouri 6.5 against Mississippi State. Look, I don't think Missouri is a bad team. I think they just are in that unfortunate kind of middle of the pack. They play in the SEC, which is obviously one of the best conferences in college football. They aren't on the same level as some of the other, premier teams that are in that conference. But, 3 losses this year. They lost to Bama by 3 points, right? They kept it close. Vandy, they only lost by 7. Their starting quarterback went down that game. Still, they keep it 1-score game. Last week, they ran into a red-hot A&M team, right? And, a lot of people are arguing that A&M right now, I think they're ranked 3, but a lot of people are arguing, that they could be higher. They could be 2 above Indiana or even potentially 1, right? There's some arguments going on there. A&M's been lighting it up. And look, Missouri only lost 38-17. So they kept it pretty close. They're not losing to bad teams. They're taking care of those bad teams. They're just running into better opponents that they just can't beat. Like I said, their quarterback went out during the Vandy game, Bo Prabula. He's got a dislocated ankle. They're not ruling him out for the rest of the year, but Matt Zollers is their backup. He played last week, got his first start against A&M. Didn't do terrible, right? Didn't turn the ball over. He got thrown into the fire against a top 5 team. I think that's always tough. I think this week you play Mississippi State. He's got that experience under his belt now. He's actually started a game. I think his confidence goes up a little bit. I think they bounce back and he gets a win as a starter. So those are my lock picks, and I'll hold on the game of the week.
Great card, Cole. And, I wanted to hammer home, a point that you made about A&M potentially being the number 1 team in the country. Right now, this is really one of those years where Ohio State has held the number 1 spot for so long just because they have not messed up, right? Like, I feel like it's one of those years where, they're a good team. They've been playing really well. They've been playing at the top of their game. But not that they haven't done anything, but they haven't set themselves that far ahead of Indiana and A&M. They've all done fantastic things. They just have not crossed paths, so it's really hard to evaluate.
Well, I think there's a lot of recency bias there too, right? Because they did win the national championship last year, right? So they come in as the top team from last season, and like you said, they haven't done anything to mess it up. So why would you knock them off, right?
Football polls, for better or worse, kind of operate on like a boxing and MMA basis, where it's like, you can't really beat the champ by decision. You have to knock out the champ. You have to DQ the champ, et cetera, et cetera. You have to finish.
TKO the champ. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. Like it. But if you look at the numbers, and I was taking a look at a lot of different ranking systems earlier this weekend. I was looking at stuff like the Kali Matrix, which was used in the BCS, which people who have listened to this show before know that I'm a fan of. I was looking at ESPN's SP Plus ratings, and I was also just looking at top offenses, top defenses, just in straight up points allowed, points scored. Ohio State is number 1 in SP Plus defense. They're number 1 in the ESPN SP Plus rankings. But the Kali Matrix actually has Texas A&M as the number 1 team in the country. Indiana is number 2 in the Kali Matrix. They're number 2 in ESPN's SP Plus. But Indiana's got the best scoring offense and the second best scoring defense, right behind Ohio State on the defensive side. And another team that's surprisingly doing really well, not surprisingly doing well, but I feel like is doing very well in a lot of the metrics that is not really being reflected in the college football playoff rankings is Utah, which you have at -6.5 versus Baylor, Cole. So just to get an idea, Utah right now in ESPN's SP Plus rankings is the 7th best team in the country. They're 15th in the Kali Matrix, and they have both a top 10 and a top 10 scoring offense and scoring defense in the country. Obviously, there's some pretty good teams around the Big 12. Texas Tech obviously standing out. Do you feel like Utah has a chance with, they've got 4 ranked wins on their resume as well. I mean, teams that were ranked at the time they played them. Texas Tech, they have 2 ranked wins. Arizona State, Cincinnati, and then they played BYU very close, only losing 24-21. Do we feel like they are going to be one of these big what if teams when if they do not make the Big 12 title game and then in succession do not make the playoffs? Do you feel like they're going to be one of those teams that we kind of talk about? Maybe this format kind of left them in the dust a little bit.
I don't think so. Not necessarily. I mean, they've been great this year. They've been great for a long time. Kyle Whittingham's a hell of a coach. He's done a great job with that program for, the 20 plus years that he's been there. But, you look at the Big 12, Texas Tech and BYU are atop. Then you got Cincinnati and Houston right below them, right before Utah. So, I mean, look, Cincinnati, Houston, they all have 2 losses as well as Utah. I think ultimately Texas Tech and BYU are going to be playing in the Big 12 championship. We saw them play last week, and I think that they're the 2 best teams in that conference. And I don't think that Utah's getting screwed. I just think they didn't do enough in the games that mattered this year to push themselves over the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is like kind of what Utah was supposed to be last year. I know we talked about this at the beginning of the show, a couple months ago, but like we all thought Utah was going to be a force last year, right? And they never really got there. So
yeah, I mean they ran into injuries, right? Cam Rising,
yeah,
we talked a lot about this. I mean the guy, he was there forever, had a lot of injury problems. So I think that's what prohibited them in the past, but prevented them from getting there in the past. But this year, I mean, we've said it all year. The Big 12 has been wide open since week 1, right? And it was just a matter of who's going to win the head-to-head matchups, who's going to emerge. And, BYU has been there pretty much all year. I know they lost last week to Texas Tech, but their defense has been unbelievable. On the flip side, Texas Tech's offense has been electric. And, they're in the top 2 positions for a reason, respectively.
Absolutely. And, I think that just proves, right, Utah, a good team on the outside, potentially on the outside looking in. It proves that this 12-team field is not as easy as, some people are complaining about it to be. Like, that's, Utah is a team that has to play a lot better to, try and earn a spot. Let's get into Tondo's card. He had a really good week last week, still trying to get over the hump. And then this week he's got Louisville -2.5 versus Clemson, Virginia +4.5 versus Duke, BYU -4.5 versus TCU, UNLV -6.5 versus Utah State, Pitt +12.5 versus Notre Dame, but the Notre Dame money line, very interesting. After the Pitt head coach's comments earlier this week, his FCS lock of the week, Villanova money line versus Stony Brook. FBS lock of the week, Utah -7.5 versus Baylor. Pitt +12.5, even though they're entering the game not really caring, allegedly. Since this is not an ACC game, so is Tondo, getting a little risky here with the Panthers?
Yes, that's the bottom line. They're going to get blown out. I have no additional analysis behind that, except.
Yeah, I mean,
I can't believe he said that. Wow.
Well, let me get the full quote to be fair.
I'll touch upon it. Pat Narduzzi and his comments about Pitt's remaining schedule as you pull that up, Basel. But I mean, yeah, they're not so worried about Notre Dame, but their remaining 2 games after Notre Dame in the ACC that he's stressing the importance of for his team are against Georgia Tech and Miami. So, I mean, both of which, or one of which, they got to go to Georgia Tech and then they play Miami at home. But, those aren't guaranteed wins either. I mean, right now, Pitt's sitting at 7-2. They could be 7-5 by the end of the year. And we all know how they started last year. they started electric and then it all blew up. So if that happens again, and especially in light of his recent comments, Pat Narduzzi might be, firing up his seat a little bit. The temperature might be getting
that seat
hot.
has been warm since the beginning of the year, though, Cole. All right, like people have a bit of a stick up their ass about him and Pitt right now, right? And maybe, I don't know, it's going to look really bad if it's going to not end very well for him if they get blown out and they finish 7-5. And I think we all know where this is heading, but what do I know?
So yeah, and to be, to have some journalistic integrity on this show, to give the full Pat Narduzzi quote, he was asked if this game against Notre Dame is a must win. He said, quote, "Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game." I'm glad you brought that up. It's not an ACC game. I'd gladly get beat 103 or 110-10 in that game. They can put up 100 on us as long as we win the next two after that. But again, our focus is on Notre Dame and getting as many wins as we can. So
yeah, I mean, look, I don't think it's crazy. He's not wrong, right?
No.
Like when it comes
that's
down
the thing.
to
The substance is not incorrect. Yeah, I agree.
I think it's just kind of the how it looks. You don't want your head coach to be saying like, we don't care if we lose by 100 points, right, to any game. But I do get what he's saying, because if he does somehow lose to Notre Dame, but then ends up pulling off the upsets against Georgia Tech and Miami, then guess what? Pittsburgh's playing in the ACC championship, right?
Yeah.
So I do get where Narduzzi's coming from. I just think it's, how he was coming across. And, like Jake's saying, a lot of people aren't thrilled with how Pitt's been playing the last couple of years. So for your head coach to kind of come out and say that publicly, I think that's something that you kind of keep behind closed doors. And I don't even think that it's something that you should be saying to your team, right? Maybe you talk amongst your coaching staff and say, hey, like, if we lose this game, it's not the end of our year. It's not a big deal. We just got to buckle down the last 2 weeks. But to say that in front of your team, like, hey, doesn't matter if we lose, and then say it publicly for the whole world to hear, not the best decision.
Yeah, I have two takeaways from this quote. One, there was some points that I saw some people on social media make. I can't remember who said it, but I kind of disagreed with it. Basically, they were saying that this quote basically showing that Notre Dame's opponent heading into this one, because it's not a conference game, and Notre Dame is in an outright playoff position as an independent, kind of shows that this is why Notre Dame should join a conference, because when you're playing an independent schedule, you're always going to be playing schools that are playing you out of conference, so they might not be trying as hard. At the same time, I don't really think that's Notre Dame's fault that all of a sudden their opponent's head coach is all of a sudden talking about how he doesn't care about the game, because on paper, this is a good opponent on Notre Dame's schedule. They're 4-1 in the ACC. They're trying to get into an ACC title game. So Notre Dame kind of did everything right by scheduling. Excuse me, they're 5-1 in the ACC. Notre Dame kind of did everything right by putting them on the schedule. It just kind of lined up, unfortunate for them, that their coach is saying that all of a sudden he doesn't really care about the game. My second takeaway is, if Pitt wins, and he said earlier in the week that he does not care about this game, that will be an all-time quote. That will be an all-time quote in the history of the Pitt.
Well, to hop on that too, Basel, right? I think we're missing kind of the bigger picture here too, right? If Pitt beats Notre Dame this week, guess what? Notre Dame's out. They're not going to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Right? So that is, if I was the head coach of Pitt, right, I would be saying, we focus on what's in front of us each week. We just focus on the game that we're playing. I'm not getting ahead in the schedule. And I'm telling my guys, you have the opportunity to take a team that was playing in the national championship last year and knock them out of college football playoff contention for this year. That should be the message.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
How does that not fire you up? Exactly. That's the point. It's like,
if anyone from Pitt If anyone from Pitt's listening, I'm open. I'm available for hire. If you want to put me on the sideline.
We'll do the 3-man. I'll wear the blue shirt. Cole, you wear the green shirt, and Jake, you wear the red shirt. We'll do the
perfect.
We'll do the signals on the sideline. That's how we'll run the program. But yeah, that will be. I will definitely be watching that one pretty closely to see what happens there. Considering how
That'd be
Notre
so
Dame,
funny if they do. I can already see like the quote card of "I don't care about this game," and they win and they're celebrating and all that stuff, and
Some
that'd be
reverse
so funny.
psychology going on.
that'll be the quote that the players
Yeah.
smack on the plaque on their way out of the tunnel at Pitt. From now on.
I don't care about this game.
Maybe Pat Narduzzi's playing chess and we're all just playing checkers. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe
Nonchalant.
we're doing exactly what he wants us to be doing.
Pat Narduzzi, nonchalant head coaching is the future. Let's get into my card. As you can see, I've been just god awful.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Abysmal.
Man.
I'm turning around. I don't think I have time this year to get above 500, but I can do my best to stop the bleed as much as I can. Let's get into it. I got Virginia plus 4.5 versus Duke, Notre Dame minus 12.5 versus Pitt, because as we've mentioned, Pitt might not really care about this game. BYU minus 4.5 versus TCU. San Diego State minus 2.5 versus Boise State. I'm trusting that elite San Diego State defense. Louisville minus 2.5 versus Clemson. And then my FCS lock, Jake, you tarnish my legacy. You tarnish my name, my family's name by
You're
picking
coming for
against
me.
Fordham University, even though I'm sure I've actually probably picked against Fordham at some point, maybe even this season on this show. But you get me, I get you. I'm going for New Hampshire.
So you have to return the favor.
Yeah, versus Bryant. New Hampshire, the alma mater of friend of the show and Las Vegas Raiders running back Dylan Laube, cousin of House Enterprises' very own Jordan Laube. And then my FBS lock of the week, USF, sticking it to Paul Feinbaum and going up against a Navy team that really struggled against Notre Dame last week. I've got them minus 9.5. And boys, that's our standard card for this week. But now let's get into our game of the week, which will be a fantastic one. And that is the Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Oklahoma Sooners. This game is being played at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on ABC. It's happening in Tuscaloosa, Oklahoma. 7-2, 3-2 in the SEC. Alabama storming through the SEC right now, 8-1, 6-0 in conference play. You've got two fantastic quarterbacks, John Mateer going up against Ty Simpson, both at the top of their game right now. I'm curious to see how we feel like this is going to, affect the playoff picture. Obviously, Oklahoma right now, they are currently 11th. That is fringe. They are not in the picture right now because of obviously the two. You want to be top 10 as an at-large team, obviously, because then you've got the two auto bids right now coming out of the ACC and the American, because both of those teams are out of the top 12 straight up. So they're taking away this bid from Oklahoma right now. So they got to follow up their excellent 33-27 away win versus Tennessee with a win in Tuscaloosa. Alabama, on the other hand, has plenty of cushion. They have been rocking since their season opening loss to Florida State. They've taken down Georgia. They've taken down Vandy. They've taken down Mizzou and Tennessee. South Carolina and LSU were also there. They lost. They're not as good, so it doesn't really matter as much. But Alabama still beat them. We've got two fantastic schools going up against each other. Cole, first up, how do you feel like this one's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think this game matters a lot more for the Sooners than it does Bama, because if Oklahoma somehow wins this game on the road, that's a huge resume builder for them. I think it helps their case to get them. Right now, they're kind of on the fringe, on the bubble, potentially getting in, potentially may not. If they beat Alabama, they're getting in, right? Mm-hmm. If Alabama loses this game, I still think that they get in. They're just not ranked as high as they would have been. But, between this game in Tuscaloosa and you got Georgia and Texas this week, two huge games in the SEC. They're going to have a ton of implications for the college football playoff. We know that Georgia and Texas last year, great game that they played. So these two games are going to be so exciting to watch. how I think this goes, my prediction for game of the week. I mean, Basel, you hit the nail on the head. Alabama's been smooth sailing since that week one loss against Florida State, right? Ty Simpson, he's been consistent throughout the whole year. He's been, solid for the Tide. I think they have found their groove under Kalen DeBoer. Finally, look, Oklahoma, they stole one against Tennessee a couple weeks ago on the road, but I don't think that's going to happen in Tuscaloosa this week. I think it's a completely different team. I think Oklahoma, they're coming off a bye week. In this case, I think it hurts them. Usually I would say, that's good. It gives you more time to prepare. You're well rested. You don't, have to worry so much about injuries. But I think at this point, I think it actually helps Alabama more because they've been on such a groove. They beat LSU last week at home. I think it allows them to just keep steamrolling, right? And look, Bama, if they win this game, they have the opportunity to just keep climbing, right? They're at 4 right now. They're ranked 4 behind A&M, Indiana, Ohio State. If they win this game, they got Eastern Illinois next week, which should be a blowout. And then you have Auburn for the Iron Bowl. And Auburn, we know they fired Hugh Freeze. They've been having a down year. I think Alabama takes care of them. So if you beat Oklahoma this week at home and you win out over the next 2 weeks, you finish the season at 11-1. You're going to the SEC championship, and you're either playing A&M or potentially Ole Miss, depending on what happens with A&M and Texas later in the year, the last week of the season. But you're going to be playing definitely in the SEC championship if you win the rest of your games. I think they know that. I think if they get to the SEC championship and it is A&M who is ranked in front of them currently and they beat them, they could, not only leapfrog to 3, but could even get into 1 or 2 seeds come college football playoff time. So I think there's a ton of potential there for Alabama. I think they, they're in charge of their destiny for the rest of the year. And I think, the last couple seasons, Alabama has been below where they expect to be. Now they're right back, in the conversation and have the potential to be one of those top teams come college football playoff time. So with all that being said, I think that the Tide take care of the Sooners this week and cover 5.5 at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, what you got here?
Cole had a lot of what I had to say, man. I mean, my only thing that I'd add is think about where we were at with this Alabama team in September, right? And people were calling for Kalen DeBoer's job, right? They were saying how bad he is compared to, there's only one Nick Saban, which is definitely true, right? But I mean, Alabama's come a long way here. They've done everything that they should have done, right? Now they're 8-1 here. I won't repeat any of the schedule, but I'm really impressed with wins against Tennessee. With LSU last week, obviously was a different circumstance without BK, but yeah, I mean, what a different perspective we have on Bama right now than we did when we were starting this show. I also have had mixed feelings on John Mateer for this whole year, right? Like I know he's been the guy that's kind of like been anointed as this, next, look at this transfer success, right? And I always forget, I was Washington State, not Oregon State, that he came from, but like he just, to me, it's nothing's popping out where I'm like, wow, look at how great this guy is, right? He's been good. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think he's been a solid quarterback for Oklahoma, but he's had no more than 1 passing touchdown every single game so far this year, except the opener. Granted, he can run, right? And he's been giving that unique other dimension, but that for me is something that Alabama has seen before and can easily take away, right? Like that's my thought on how this thing goes. So I think how that translates literally into this game is they put a little pressure on him early, maybe force him to make some bad decisions, maybe try to take away his run game and force him to pass the football down the field a little bit more and trust your secondary at that point. So yeah, we'll see what happens here, but I'm with Cole. I think while it means a little bit more for the Sooners, Bama's going to come out on top here.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys. So obviously we were talking about this is pretty much an elimination game for Oklahoma. Alabama, they're sitting pretty comfortable at the fourth spot. But if they lose this game, they're not out of the playoff picture. I think they'd still be in the top 12 and still have an at-large bid once next week's bracket gets made. But they're not super comfortable with a loss because that puts them at 6-1, right, in the SEC. Oklahoma could move up to 6-1 this week. Georgia has the potential to move up to 7-1, which would put them ahead of Alabama, even though Bama's got the tiebreaker should they finish with, identical records in the SEC. So Alabama still does need to make sure that they come out of this game pretty clean to clinch a spot in the SEC title game. Could we see Ole Miss kind of sneak in there over these next couple weeks?
I think Ole Miss is in a great position right now because if you look at their remaining schedule, they only have Florida left and Mississippi State, right? So they only have 2 games left. Yeah. And right now they're sitting at, they're sitting at 4th in the SEC behind Georgia, Alabama, and A&M, right? Mm-hmm. Georgia's got Texas this week. A&M still has to play Texas. So Texas, they're another team that's fighting to stay in the college football playoff conversation, right? So they got to win these games against both Georgia and A&M, I think, to get in because they already have 2 losses. So, Ole Miss, if Texas can somehow beat A&M, then I think Ole Miss gets in. I don't know exactly what the tiebreaker is, but I would think that Ole Miss would get in. And so if out of all these teams, I think Ole Miss is in the best position right now.
Yeah. It would be kind of tough. It gets kind of quirky because then Alabama beat Georgia and then Georgia beat Ole Miss and then Alabama and Ole Miss did not play. So right. It gets a little tricky there, but yeah, very interesting. And I just wanted to point that out because I don't think Alabama fans should kind of kick their feet up yet. You know what I mean? I think
but I do think if Alabama loses, they still would only have 2 losses. And then the teams with 2 losses, right, would be Oklahoma. So then Oklahoma would have a head-to-head win against Alabama. That helps, right? Mm-hmm. But then the other 2 lost teams in the SEC are Vandy and Texas, right? And like I'm saying, Texas has to beat Georgia and A&M, right, remaining on the year. And Vandy lost to Alabama already. So I just think that even if they lose, Bama's still one of the top 12 teams.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So I think we're all going with Bama -5.5 here. Any other thoughts before we wrap up our show?
It's going to be a fun week. A lot of playoff implications. And, we're getting down to the wire. It's, mid-November now, almost December, playoff time. Looking forward to it. And, there's always fireworks at the end of the year, especially once we get into conference championships and all that. So there's a lot more football to be played. And, a lot of these outcomes are going to, make or break these teams. So it's going to be fun down the stretch to see what happens.
Yeah, it feels like
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Basel.
No, you go, Jake.
No, I was just going to do rapid-fire games we did not talk about. Interesting stuff. Tennessee -40 over New Mexico State. Can they cover a 6-touchdown spread? Ole Miss over Florida. I don't know if that came up. That was 14.5. That was interesting. Might be a little low. I'm just saying. And Georgia Tech over Boston College, right? A 16.5 spread. Boston College 1-9. Georgia Tech has 2 weeks to ruminate over their loss. I think this goes one of 2 ways. Either BC pulls off a crazy upset or Bill O'Brien gets fired. I think the bell is starting to toll for him. Things are getting antsy in Chestnut Hill. So that's just rapid fire stuff we did not talk about that could be very interesting this week.
And
another one I got Clemson, Louisville. That's going to be a tight game.
That was on my card, man. I'm ready for Louisville.
Yeah. I mean, Clemson, they got Louisville this week. Furman the week after should be a win, but you never know. And then South Carolina to finish the year. So, if Clemson drops to Louisville, they're 4-6 on the year. That would ensure them not getting a winning season this season. And I don't know. I mean, another seed in the ACC that could be getting hot, right? We talked about Pitt, people not being happy there. Well, Clemson's been on the downward trajectory with Dabo the last couple years as well. So we'll see what happens.
Jake, you know who that one on BC's 1-9 is right now, right?
Oh man, is that UConn? No, it's not UConn.
No, it's the Fordham Rams.
Yeah, that's. Sorry, man.
We beat Holy Cross. That's all I care about. We beat Holy Cross.
Like if Bryant beats URI, that's all that matters, and they haven't done that, so it's all good. Bryant's got a big tilt with New Hampshire this weekend. We already talked about that too. Yep. Cole and I's big hitters were games we already talked about. And
I spited you. So that'll wrap it up for our football house. As you know, before we start forgetting everything else we've talked about 45 minutes ago. But until then, make sure you keep checking out the House Enterprise blog. Follow us on all the socials that you see below. We are in the thick of it in terms of the NFL, college basketball. Make sure you are following at College Hoops HE as well as Road to the Garden on X. We are putting out so much great stuff for you guys to check out. And we're still sticking around here. We've still got, I know we're talking about how it's kind of close to the end of the season, but we've got another 2 months. The national championship game is on January 19th. So that's very late.
That's so late. Wow.
Yeah, it was on the 20th last year.
I love it.
Yeah.
The more football, the better, baby.
We got a long way to go. So we're not going anywhere, but make sure you check us out every week here at the Football House. Follow us on Twitter and just have a great weekend of college football. So for Cole Hughes, Jake Zimmer, I'm Sam Basel. This has been the Football House, and we'll see you guys next time.